Kind of big freelance story I did. Magazine, I pitched it to a magazine editor I had just written short pieces for before. It was about 2 religious colleges in America. One was called the Ave Maria Law School, which was a Catholic law school, and the other one was called Patrick Henry College, which is in Virginia, and it's an evangelical college, mostly for kids who've been homeschooled. So I said to this editor, it's kind of weird that these 2 colleges are opening up right now. I mean, I had not recently graduated from college myself, and it struck me that there were an awful lot of colleges out there, and I couldn't figure out why, in God's name, anyone would open up a new college. It seemed like a lot of work, a lot of bureaucracy, and couldn't these people find a college out there that suited them? So anyway, he said, well, why don't you go visit them? So again, this was kind of a new thing for me, actually, not only just calling up people, but doing on-the-ground reporting. I had this kind of horrible scene where I missed a flight on this trip, and I was trying to rent a car at the airport, and it was like 11 o'clock at night in Detroit, and no one would rent me a car because I was under the age of 25. So I finally begged this bus driver who was driving a budget rent-a-car bus, please, 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 will you believe me, I'm a responsible driver. So anyway, he let me rent the car, but then when I later had to do my expense report, I had to explain to this editor why I had rented a car with one company, and then they charged me, and then I had to go rent with another company. And I said, because I wasn't old enough. And he's like, he had never met me before. He said, is this like one of those weird things where you're like 14 or something, and you're trying to put one over on me? No, I'm just not 25 yet. So I went and did the story, and it was actually pretty interesting. The kids that I met were unlike kids that I had really met before anywhere in high school or college. I mean, they were very strong religious believers. They really thought very hard about what was wrong with the higher education options that they were offered. And they wanted, when they went off to college, to not have their religious beliefs attacked. But they also saw their faith in a very intellectual way, too. So they wanted to have an education where they learned about the intellectual origins of their faith and also tried to integrate it in a variety of ways with the education that they were getting. So whether they were getting an undergraduate degree or a law degree, they really thought that faith was going to be a part of that education. So I ended up looking at the numbers, something I also did not do regularly before I started that book. And it turns out that religious college enrollment was growing. And it was growing the fastest at the colleges that were actually required the most of students in some ways. They were the strictest schools. They were the schools that didn't allow drinking. Some of them didn't allow dancing. They had strong curfews. And there were all sorts of things about these schools that would lead you to wonder, who are these kids who want to go to these schools? Or are they crazy? And it was a question I got a lot after I published the book. I mean, these people who would read the book would say, well, don't their parents just force them to go? I would say, oddly, no. You know, some of them told their parents this is where they wanted to go, and their parents objected. But I had this amazing experience. I went to about 24 of these colleges. I got some foundation funding to do it. So I traveled everywhere from Brigham Young University, which is a Mormon school out in Utah, to Bob Jones University, which is a sort of famous in the sense that a lot of people find it very backward, religious school in South Carolina. I traveled to very small and kind of insular Catholic schools. I went to Yeshiva University. I went to a Buddhist college out in California. And I sort of came back and I sat down and tried to figure out, what were the common themes I was seeing. And this was, I think this, for me, and I think most authors will tell you, is probably the hardest part of writing the book, is kind of, you do all this research and you have to decide to stop at some point, which is hard. But kind of figuring out where this is all going and how to organize the chapters. So fortunately, a fellowship that I got actually paid a small stipend to someone to mentor me, which was great. He's a journalist and has a column for the Wall Street Journal now. And so I would come back from some of these trips and I would sit down and kind of download everything that I had learned on the trip in, one breath, and I would, tell him everything, and then he would say, oh, that reminds me of when you said this. And so together we kind of worked on the structure of the book. But to this day, I mean, even, I think it's important to have a mentor, but it's also important, I think, you know, if you want to write anything long, certainly to have somebody to kind of bounce these ideas off of, because they get, at least in my head, they sort of all get jumbled together. I don't know when to stop doing the research, and I'm not really sure how to organize everything.